Good evening and welcome to Encore with Zoe Ryan. As always, bringing you the best of what's happening in the arts across the Midlands. On this week's show, motions and murals in Offaly, a rising star in Laois and a selection of workshops, classes and productions on offer in Westmeath. Later on, we'll be talking to Birr-raised multidisciplinary artist Christor on using his visual impairment to curate a signature colour palette for his debut solo exhibition. And actor Daniel Edgerton will be here to give us a rundown of the events on offer at Mullingar Arts Centre in the coming weeks and months. But first, earlier this month, Sinn Fein tabled a motion to protect Irish artists from artificial intelligence. Now, the threat of AI to our artists and their livelihood is not a new topic of conversation. In fact, it's a concern that has been raised by multiple artists from various disciplines on this very show, from illustrators to voice actors and every creative you can think of in between. Joining me now to weigh in on the conversation is Tullamore native and Offaly County Councillor Aoife Masterson. Aoife, thank you for making the journey out to our studios this evening to flesh this out.
Thank you so much, Zoe, to yourself and your listeners to have me on to talk about this really, I suppose, important and topical and timely issue. That's why we've brought the motion at this time, because time and again artists are reaching out to us to say the difficulty that they're facing. And the difficulties that artists have faced, particularly since the 90s, aren't new. They're something that have gone back long before artificial intelligence. Just trying to make it. I'm sure there's many of your listeners who have had such harrowing experiences themselves of spending years trying to make it as an artist, doing absolutely everything right, and still struggling to make ends meet. And it's not a reflection on the art, it's not a reflection on the artist, it's a reflection on where we are as a society, with where we value the arts. And this is an opportunity to, I suppose, we didn't get it right as a country in the last decade, 2 decades, in relation to the arts. Their threat has only gotten bigger with the prominence of AI. And this is a real opportunity to get this right, to make sure that things do not get any worse for artists, that we recognise the artistic culture and heritage that we have in Ireland, and that we finally say enough is enough and we value the arts.
And before we get into talking about this motion that your party have put forward, as you say, to try and bring about this change, how is it that artists, why do they need protection at this time? How is AI being misused, I suppose, in a way that's negatively impacting them?
So what I would say is, AI is like many things. It's fantastic in some instances, but the problem is that AI is built on a huge database, and what we are, I suppose, living through at the moment is really the greatest art heist in history.
Yes.
It is the entire corpus of global achievement in writing, music, film, the visual arts is up for grabs and is being abused for corporate greed. Because what's happening is, even there was a recent examination into books as a good example, and it was found that AI companies are buying up limited one edition copies of books so that they can get the copy of them, be the only copy of them, and then are actually destroying the book when it's finished. And it's very similar to what's happening with the arts as well. What's happening is pieces of work, pieces of art that are so unique to the individual artist's circumstances, the individual artist's experience and life view and everything, are being swallowed up by AI and used to generate something that very closely mimics the artist, but does not have the artist's experience, the artist's life value, and is being churned out en masse to the audiences. And the extent of this, I think, is sometimes misunderstood. But studies show that 24%, just under a quarter, of music creators' revenue is at risk by 2028. And as we said, artists are already so vulnerable.
Yes,
they are already struggling to make ends meet. We saw the huge pickup on the pilot programme for the arts recently, where there was so much demand that it was oversubscribed, that there was chaos when people who didn't get an offer were told that they had incorrectly. And really, when people are in such a vulnerable position, we have to take action against this. We cannot allow this to continue. It really is important. 85% of streams generated by fully AI generated tracks in 2025 were fraudulent, and 75,000 fully generated AI tracks are uploaded to Deezer every single day. These figures are just shocking.
Yeah.
Artists can't produce tracks at that rate and shouldn't be expected to. It's
mad how sophisticated the software is nowadays. Like, we even see, someone recently said to me, look at this. This was the first AI video that came out. It was Will Smith eating spaghetti, right? And you looked at it and you saw how crude the first edition was, and that was only going back a year or so. Like, it wasn't that long ago. So in a very short space of time, they've gotten really, really sophisticated. And as you said, you can input the likes of saying, you know, here's an artist's work, churn me out something that's in their style, in their likeness. And that's the scary part for those creatives who've put their blood, sweat and tears into making those originals, for them to be taken and in seconds turned out to replicate pieces that look like theirs but aren't theirs. And I found it interesting. We had an illustrator on a number of weeks ago, and she said that these AI generated pieces, sometimes people use them. They look at them and they go, there's something not right with it, but I can't quite tell what it is. And they'll bring it to maybe the likes of an illustrator or an animator, and they look at it and go, I can see exactly what's wrong and I can tell you how to fix it. It could be just like turning it or flipping it around to the other side and it'll look more natural to the eye. But she was saying that that is the part that AI can't bring. It can't make those tweaks in the final elements where you're looking going, there's something just off about it, and an untrained eye, can't tell what it is, whereas the artist will. But I found it interesting that you mentioned about the heist, because I was going to say to you about those comments that were made about, did you agree with that? And clearly you do.
Absolutely. I think that there is no other word for what is happening at the moment. And I think sometimes, you know, there is this perception that these are multinational artists whose works are. These are artists who are making huge money on tour, who are making money from merchandising, everything like that. But first of all, any artist knows the vast majority of artists are not in that position. That's not reflective of where the vast majority of art and the art that we as a community enjoy is local artists, local musicians, local painters, exhibitors, all of that. But what I would say is I would encourage anyone, there's actually a really interesting website that The Atlantic have, and it's called their AI Watchdog.
Interesting.
I would encourage any listener to actually have a look on that, because that shows the extent of what is being stolen from artists. It is not the Taylor Swifts. It is not unique to the Coldplays. You name your favourite artist. It is not unique to them. This is something that's happening to local artists.
Yeah, they're suffering as well.
And these are artists, like I said, who are maybe already working a second job, just trying to supplement this. And it's more than, or certainly equal to, taking the financial element. It's taking the creative element.
Yeah.
It's taking something that's so unique to the individual. And like you said, AI cannot replicate the real experience. It cannot replicate the lived experience of the artist. That is what makes art unique, and that is what we risk losing if we continue with this track with AI.
In some instances, it does make a good attempt at it. But more and more, I'm seeing even the likes of outside shops that are maybe saying that, oh, we have, you know, someone coming up, or, you know, we're going to be screening an event. And you can clearly see they've used AI to generate the images. And I think we're getting sick of it. Hopefully, I think people are getting sick of it, and that they will retreat back to the original works of the artist. But I found it interesting you were saying about, you know, that website, because only this week I came across an account online. They're called Hi From a Human. That's the name of the account. And they actually have created nearly a watermark of sorts that you can put on your work. And it's like a handprint. And their slogan is made by humans, felt by humans. And I think that's the part there that's, you know, anyone can make something. The computers can make things, but they can't feel the emotions that have gone into creating it, the emotions that it evokes in a person when they watch it. And they've said that they're celebrating the hands, minds and hearts behind the work of, and they've listed a whole list of creatives there.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting that you say about the level of AI that's come into, I suppose, common culture at this point, that it's in everything. And I understand, as someone who, you know, uses social media for my work, I understand the temptation to put the exact information that you need into AI and it generates an image. But we do have artists on the other side of that are losing work. We have artists, we have graphic designers, we have businesses that need that work and that ultimately create something unique that can't be replicated. But one other thing I would say is I suppose it's an aspect that we're very conscious of, and very conscious that as elected representatives and, you know, the government as well, we have to take a lead on this. And one of the pieces of the legislation actually specifically calls for government to ensure that no state funding for art is spent on content produced by AI, and that the livelihood of human Irish artists continue to be supported. So the move away from that, I suppose, that inclination and that growing trend of using AI and making sure that where there is government funding going into a project, that real artists
they're at the end of it.
End of it, and that they're supported for the work that they do. I think that is key. We have to say, if state money is going into something, that it has to support the artists, because we cannot, on one hand, support artists through the various pilot projects, and on the other hand, undercut their livelihood.
And it's a case of, like, the AI, there's benefits to it as well. We saw with the likes of going back how many years when the likes of automation was brought into the factories. What did it do? It cut down on the time, something that was time consuming that a human had to carry out. It cut down on that time, and it allowed them to maybe work elsewhere. So AI can be used by artists for their benefits. So like I saying, okay, automatically put, I don't know, all my invoices into this spreadsheet, you know, things like that. And then it allows them to actually focus on the creative side of it. So that's important to note as well, that AI can have the benefits. But this motion was put forward, Aoife, you know, less than 2 weeks ago. Where has it been? Is it a case of there's been any conversation since, or has it stopped dead? Has it progressed?
Now, unfortunately, one of the downsides of the Dáil is that the Dáil goes on recess for the summer.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
And unfortunately, right after we brought this bill, and I should say that as a party, we've opposed the long recesses that we get. We're one of the few professions in Ireland where you get to go off on your hollybops for months on end. But unfortunately, the reality is that at the moment, the Dáil is on recess. So the Dáil is not sitting at the moment.
Do you think that was convenient that the motion was raised then, nearly in the final kind of days of it, or was it just a horrible coincidence?
Well, I think it's probably a horrible coincidence, but I would say every coincidence is not without, it's what you make of it.
Yes.
And what we would say is that while the Dáil is on recess, we are coming into the European presidency, and this is where we need to get things moving. Ireland has been a leader in the arts internationally for generations. And this is where we need to focus our European presidency. We need to use this opportunity and our opportunity as the presidency of the Council of Europe to draw attention and to lead efforts to resolve these issues. And that includes organising a dedicated conference focusing on protecting the copyrights of artists in the context of generative AI and introducing legislation domestically. So it's twofold. There is the legislation that needs to be brought in, but prior to the legislation, we also need to raise awareness to make sure that we get this legislation right and that we get a full and accurate understanding. And that work can begin now. Just because the Dáil is on recess does not mean that this that this motion has to sit still. We need to see the government take action when they are arranging the meetings for the European presidency, when they are deciding the programme for work. This needs to be front and centre.
Aoife, I appreciate you giving your time to discuss the matter this evening.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to your listeners.
Coming up, an Offaly artist who, from the sounds of it, would benefit from such a motion being introduced. Midlands 103. You are listening to Encore on Midlands 103 with Zoe Ryan. Now, it's that time of year again where the Birr Vintage Week and Arts Festival is returning for its 57th year. Starting from tomorrow, Friday, July 31st, and running right up until August 8th, the street and various venues across the town will become hubs of creativity and entertainment, with a host of events and activities to entertain the whole family on offer, including theatre showcases, street performances, music concerts, workshops, even a vintage tennis tournament and a teddy bear's picnic, as well as visual art exhibitions, including Catastrophe, a newly launched or revealed body of work by local artist Christor. Joining me now to take a deeper look at those pieces is the Offaly-raised creative himself. Christor, you're very welcome onto Encore.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, you've been involved in group shows before, but recently you unveiled your first solo exhibition in Birr Theatre and Arts Centre. Tell me about it. Walk me through the exhibition space.
Yeah, it's a great place, Birr Theatre and Arts Centre. For art, Birr as a town, there's so many opportunities to be part of collaborative and group things, but having this as a solo show is, that's a different thing. So I applied to their open call for exhibitions and, thankfully they said yes. So these works, as you said, I work across a few different mediums.
Yes.
I work in digital print, collages, films, and now more paintings. I've been working in digital pieces, stuff made in a computer and distributed online for a few years. And I got to a point of dissatisfaction with them not physically existing. I'm proud of them and I like them, but something that was created in a computer and was distributed online, you can see people have seen it, you can see people have liked it, but it doesn't have the kind of tactile human element that I was looking for. So that's why I decided to make these paintings. In terms of the actual content of the work, it was born out of this mental phenomena that I noticed I kept experiencing. It was this catastrophizing mindset, which is where the show gets its name, Catastrophe. So some of the pieces examine that as a physical reality, as the thing that could actually happen. And some of them look at it as an internal, personal, mental thing. Some of them lean into the self-destruction, and some of them are trying to pull away, and some of them are about just sitting in that moment. So it's funny. A lot of people they're terrified of flying.
Yes.
That's something that's never bothered me, because I know logically how incredibly safe it is. Even in a crash with fatalities, you're more likely to survive than you are to die. So there is a logical reassurance to that works for me. So I think with these pieces, that's what I'm trying to achieve. So aesthetically, a lot of them draw from scientific diagrams, or there's one that's like a comic strip. There's pieces with text. So they're all trying to take these difficult emotional experiences and nail them down and codify them in a way from which I can draw that sort of logical reassurance.
So it's essentially looking at loads of different catastrophes or possible catastrophe situations that people can create in their own minds, and I suppose visually, what would you say, encapsulating them?
Definitely. I think a lot of people will relate to that, your mind taking you from a standing start to the end of the world in a second, based on the seemingly innocuous interactions that you'll have with people. What I get is receiving a text when I'm not expecting one, or worse, not receiving one when I am expecting one. I'm suddenly thinking, what's happened? Has something gone wrong?
Worst case scenario, that's what we jump to.
Definitely, yeah. I'll come away from an interaction with someone just thinking, did I get that completely wrong?
Yeah.
What are they thinking about me now? So the way the pieces are arranged is, obviously quite important. There are these sort of miniature narratives between them where the pieces are placed both in the space and in relation to one another. Is quite important. There are some that are directly linked with one another, and there are some that are placed in such a way that as people come into the space where they're likely to spend time, because it's an arts centre, there's people coming through for shows and stuff, maybe dealing with tickets or something, the pieces are there. They'll be able to take the time to respond to them.
Yes.
But I think most interestingly for an exhibition in this space, something that hasn't been done before is there's a staircase leading up to the auditorium, and typically artists will hang some pieces up on that wall. But I was having quite a casual conversation with one of the staff there in the lead up to this, and we kind of hit on the idea of painting something directly onto the wall. And no one had ever done it before, I think just because no one had asked.
I was going to say it's unusual, It's nearly like, not quite damaging their property, but generally like that you'll have it in a frame or something that it can be put up and then taken down. So this one you've actually used their wall for it.
I was surprised they were so yeah, sure, go for it.
Work away.
It's just that thing of nobody had thought to ask before. So that was fun. That was two full days of doing that.
Right.
I had the assistance of my wonderful partner, Aoife. But yeah, it's odd because once the run of the exhibition is ended, it's going to get painted over.
Yeah.
It's not going to exist anymore.
Yeah, it's not a piece you can take away and, we'll say, keep with the collection.
Short of doing a Banksy paints a rat on a garage and they,
Yes.
and they remove the whole thing. Don't think we're quite there yet.
No, maybe not this time round.
But yeah, it's an interesting, because I know you can be very precious about paintings and make sure don't get them damaged. They need to be kept in this particular way. And this one, it's only going to exist for a couple of months, which is it's an interesting idea.
And you touched on the themes that you covered there. Obviously, as we said, it's titled Catastrophe. So it's all looking at kind of maybe areas of disaster, premonitions, fears that people might have. That's what you're playing on in the subject matter. But if we look at the shapes and the colours that you use, they're very kind of pop art-esque. Almost, you mentioned about a comic strip piece. To me, when I was looking through the pieces, I was going, God, this is very comic strip. It's almost Andy Warhol-like by times. But talk me through the colour palette. So you have a very limited colour palette, but there is a logical reason behind that.
Well, thank you. It's very kind. Yeah, the colour palette is an interesting one. It's black, white, a sky blue and a red. And it wasn't chosen at random. I've always been drawn to having restrictions around your work. I feel that always pushes me to do more. But the practical reason that I decided that is that when I was about 18, I think, I found that I kept having these arguments with people about the exact colours that things were.
Okay.
Items of clothing, I think even the old sort of sodium street lights. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna look into this. And I did one of those online colour blindness tests. And I discovered that I have a mild but still impactful red-green colour deficiency. So I thought, okay, I can't rely on my eyes anymore.
You can't trust that what you're seeing. Yeah.
What colour I think I'm using is actually the colour. So I thought, right, okay, I'll just stop trying to mix colours. I'll pick a palette that I can pretty much trust, and then I'll just use that. I won't concern myself with mixing and with mixing paint and matching things. I'll just use this.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you said, a lot of people have a style, and there's a lot of artists that they pick a certain colour palette and that's their signature. That's how people tend to know their work when they see maybe that arrangement of colours. But as you said, it's a very practical reason as to why you have chosen this group of colours, and then coincidentally like that, it nearly looks like a signature style, or at least for this piece, it's making it all very cohesive, this body of work. It's all working together because you're using those 4 colours. But a practical reason, as you say.
Well, I think, funnily, that's sort of what style is that style is kind of the culmination or manifestation of all the shortcuts that you've had to take to make it work, to work around your inadequacies. And then when you're looking at a final thing or a final group of work, you go, oh yeah, they've got style, but really they're just going, I can't do this, so I'll have to do it this way.
Yes, yeah, you're right, yeah. And if we look at the names then, or the titles that you've given to the pieces, as you said earlier on, the placement of these pieces, the arrangement, the order in which they come in is important. Equally are the titles. And it was the first one listed on the catalogue that really struck me. The title is This is God Telling You to Stop. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
So that piece it's 60 centimetres square. It has a red background, white border, and it is a diagram of an atom of plutonium.
Okay.
So plutonium, that came from a lot of research into the military scientific innovations of the mid-20th century with nuclear technology and weapons. And plutonium was the original element that they were using to produce these weapons. And plutonium is the element with the highest atomic number that naturally occurs in nature. There's a lot that can be synthesized. To me, that represented there's a physical limit that nature is sort of screaming at us, don't mess about up in this area. This is why it stops here. What that represented to me was a physical limit in nature that humans are always trying to push against. An atom of plutonium, it's pretty rare in nature, and it's pretty harmless. It's just sitting in rocks somewhere. But humans can take these things and, by cracking them open, unleash all sorts of hell. So to me, that represented the mental experiences that I was having of taking something, taking a text or whatever, and looking into it, and suddenly, you've ended the world.
Yeah, catastrophe has struck. And speaking of names, just like Kylie, you've chosen to be known by your first name only. Can I ask, what was the reasoning behind that?
Yes, not quite as glamorous as Kylie, unfortunately. Yeah, it's an interesting one, and people do ask about it. A lot of people think it's Scandinavian or something. It's sort of an anglicised version of the Irish version of my name, which again reflects a sort of personal identity. But honestly, the main reason behind it is people just cannot spell my surname.
Okay.
I just constantly encountering, in school, in newspapers or whatever. It's just always misspelled. So I thought, right, salt this. I'll knock it off. You can deal with that. I'll make it easy for you.
Yeah, because it's nearly like a statement piece, like it's a stage name, nearly, that it's like, I'm just Christor, that's it. But as you say, the actual reason behind it isn't quite as glamorous. It's purely that you're just sick and tired of people not being able to pronounce or spell it correctly.
Yeah. It's a workaround, like the colour palette.
Yes. And you've described yourself as a visual artist exploring identity, survival, mental health through your films, your painted images and words, which you've touched on throughout our discussion. But talk to me a little bit more about, I suppose, how it was that you got into art yourself. I believe you're a self-taught artist as well.
Yeah, pretty much. Obviously, you're always picking up things from people you're with, but yeah, taught myself most things and learned on the job, as it were, for as long as I can remember. I've been producing things. I have. I remember being 5 or 6 years old and making little films with action figures and putting them online. And now I look at like my niece, and she's that age. I'm like, that's a bit mad, isn't it? So I don't remember not being like this. I grew up in a very, very encouraging, very creatively free household. It was very much, they just sort of left us to it, to play and do what we wanted. It was never like, oh, but how are you going to get a real job out of that?
Yes.
Which I'm very grateful for. I had a phase where I was like obsessed with making comic books. And then as a teenager, I discovered music. So I was always in my bedroom writing and producing things. And then I left school. I had a proper job for a bit, which I think is important. I'm a bit suspicious of artists who've like never worked in a shop or a factory or whatever. I think it's important to get a grounding, a perspective on what like real unfun work is, So then when I was, I think about 18, I made the decision, no, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to become a professional artist. So that led to a few years sort of bouncing between mediums, just gaining whatever experience I could. But I think at this point, it has become clear to me that what I'm doing through all the things is trying both to understand myself better and hoping that through the work I can get other people to understand each other better. Basically, all the stuff that I do is me shaking my weird brain and then seeing what drops out and going, here's how I see it. What do you think?
And what do you hope the desired outcome will be from this particular body of work? It's obviously a very evocative collection of pieces that it is with the design to make people stop and to think and maybe question their actions or their way of thinking. What do you hope will come out of it from someone walking in and seeing the space? What do you want them to walk out that door thinking?
I think ideally people look at the work and either see some of their own experiences reflected back and gain some sort of comfort in that feeling of being seen and that you're not alone in these like mad mental things we put ourselves through.
Yeah.
My parents sometimes tell me that when they were younger, my mother would ask my father, like, what are you thinking? Like right now, just what are you thinking? And he'd just go, I'm not thinking of anything. He doesn't worry.
I'm just being.
Yeah. Whereas, me and my mother, we're real like warriors.
Yeah.
So the idea that somebody could just not have that going on, I think there's value for people like that in seeing the work and going, oh, this is how people are thinking.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's sort of two different perspectives you can come at it from and still get something out of it.
It's that balance, isn't there, that fight, I suppose, between the logical side of the brain, and I don't even know what we should call the other side, the illogical one, or it's also been called the creative side of the brain, that side that's always kind of fighting logic, as you said. A lot of these situations that you're looking to look at, the catastrophizing ones, you're going, I can see the logic, I know what it is, but my brain is just dying to go over to that other side and go to the dark place and maybe think of the worst end result. And sometimes I think it's nearly not the worst thing possibly to do is to think, okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen here? And we know what it is, we recognise it, and then maybe if it doesn't happen, then isn't that great? But the fear is, as I suppose, when you go too far into that side and maybe, as you say, start dwelling in it and start overthinking, that's where people maybe fall into the trap and this deep hole, and they're trying to pull themselves back to the logic. So maybe the artwork can be a bit of a grounding experience, looking at it, as you say, finding solace and knowing someone else is also thinking that way. You're not alone in that. But as I said from the offset, this is your first solo exhibition, no doubt the first of many. So once this is all finished up and you've moved on, where do you hope to go after that? Do you hope to maybe travel with this particular body of work and to bring it elsewhere, or are you on to the next thing?
I would be very happy to see it in other locations, to see if a different context would shape the meaning in any way, see how a different community of people respond to it. Funnily enough, we said earlier how I'm self-taught. Come September, I'm actually going to college to study fine art.
Okay.
So I'm kind of doing it backwards.
Yes. So you've made the leap to go back and do the formal training now.
Yeah. I don't know. That's probably another funny brain thing of that, like, I need to do this myself first. So going from school into doing this professionally and kind of figuring it out on my own terms. And then now at this point, I suppose having somewhat of a grasp on what I do and of myself, now kind of opening it to other people to start picking holes in it maybe.
Yeah, criticisms and all that, yeah.
I feel like I've provided myself now with a good grounding or a good basis to go into that environment. To build upon, that maybe before I would have been, I didn't like school much. So maybe that now that I'm approaching it more on my own terms, hopefully I'll get some benefit out of it. It's interesting. Like, I mean, I'm not too sure if your arts will be the same as media, but with media, it's kind of like, yeah, you can go down the studied route, that you can go to college and learn these things. Or a lot of people, what they do is they learn on the job. As you said, you've done yourself, and that's enough. Sometimes you never need to get the actual official qualification because you have the experience. So I would have assumed that it was similar with art, but to me, it sounds like you're not doing it for that reason. You're doing it for yourself to go, I think I know where I'm at and I'd like to maybe to build upon that and to see where I go now that I can get the steer from the formal training. Whereas it sounds like maybe if you had gone straight into the formal training, it wouldn't have been time well spent. I think that's exactly right. The way I'm approaching going to college, it is sort of not treating it like school and treating it more like a professional development thing. Yes, yeah. That I think now would be beneficial for me to go into an environment where there's a much higher density of other creative people, where hopefully these new ideas and these new people and new things that I'll be exposed to can help push to the next professional level. So that's what's next. Hopefully, Catastrophe will be moving on to a different space, see if that brings a new dimension to it. And then you yourself, you're going to be heading back to college and we might see a whole completely different body of work from there. Or maybe, as you say, a kind of umped up version of what we're getting at the moment. Definitely, yeah. Christor, it's been fabulous speaking to you today. And it really does seem like, as I said, a really thought-provoking exhibition to go along to. So hopefully some of the listeners today can pop along to see it in the time it's going to be there. It's going to be there until the end of August. So there's plenty of time to get to see it. But thank you very much for calling out to us today and talking us through it. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Another thing worth checking out at Birr Vintage Week and Arts Festival is Rathdowney Earl legend Mick Creagh's comedic production titled Come Here Till I Tell You a Good One, on at Birr Theatre and Arts Centre at 2:30 next Thursday, August 6th. I actually spoke with Mick on this show back in September ahead of him touring his one-man play, which you can listen back to on the podcast section on the Midlands 103 website or on your preferred podcast platform, the likes of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or go along and see him in action on Thursday. He's such a good character, honestly. If you can listen back to the piece, as I said, it's on that podcast section from September. He's fantastic. And even better if you can go along and see him if you're popping around the Birr Arts Centre at the weekend. Still to come, I'll be highlighting a rising musical talent and paying tribute to a fallen musical legend. Midlands 103. It's Zoe Ryan bringing you your weekly dose of Encore here on Midlands 103 on what has been a sad week and indeed month for the music industry. But now you will have heard of the passing of Glenn Hansen, the Irish musician behind that beautiful song Falling Slowly. And just the day before, media outlets reported on the death of French DJ Kavinsky, who brought us that iconic track Night Call. It was used as the soundtrack that accompanies the opening scene of the 2011 film Drive, starring Hollywood actor Ryan Gosling, which is definitely worth a watch if you haven't already seen it. So that's two more musical greats lost in the month of July, along with Welsh singer Bonnie Tyler, of course, who passed earlier in the month. But an artist who is coming up the ranks is Abbey Leaks-based singer and songwriter June, another creative who has chosen to be known by their first name only. Seems to be very popular at the moment, that. And June will be joining us on the show next week to discuss the release of her new single Nobody But You, which you can find on Spotify in the meantime if you wish. But for now, let us honour the great music composer and producer that was Kavinsky. This is Night Call.
That was Night Call by the late French musician Kavinsky, a musical masterpiece in my opinion. Up next, could you benefit from attending an acting workshop, dance class or signing yourself up to be in a play or musical? If so, this next one's for you. It is Encore on Midlands 103 with Zoe Ryan here with you until 8 o'clock. Now, last week I mentioned that Mullingar Arts Centre were hosting a voice workshop, the first in a series of workshops geared mainly towards actors, all fronted by local actor Daniel Edgerton, who I am delighted is sitting across from me now to tell us all about them. Daniel, it's lovely to finally get you in the studio rather than chatting over the phone.
Thanks, Zoe. Been really kind of working hard on these for the last little while. I'm excited to talk about it.
So tell me, how did this series come about?
Well, you see, like I've been teaching drama for a long time since I finished college, but a lot of it has been geared towards, kids and teenagers. And there seemed to be a gap in the market, say, for drama training for adults, really, because it kind of seems like, okay, once you've gone through school or whatever, you can go do drama school, and after that it kind of stops. You know, there's nothing really out there
for the adult market.
For the adult market. And so I kind of thought to myself, okay, well, what would be the best way to go about this? Because I think drama training in general, or drama classes, they're always so generalised. So, it's like, come down, we'll do some drama, we'll read some scripts, we'll sing some songs, we'll do everything.
Improv.
Whatever. It's like everything in one. Whereas I kind of wanted to focus in on, some kind of very specific niche areas of drama training.
Yes.
And then try to apply them to not necessarily just acting in general. Like, so at the weekend, just did the Creating a Voice workshop, and it went really well. It was a really good group, and but a few of the people there weren't just there for acting purposes. They wanted to work on their own voice, their kind of public speaking, and how to command a room and how to command a space. And the easy thing for me is that the process is still the same. It doesn't change at all.
You're using your voice still.
You're using your voice, and it's how you prepare that. You mean, the circumstances might change, but it's always the same point where you start. And, that's why I kind of, then working through kind of the series of workshops, kind of trying to, push into every facet of theatre, and maybe down the line we might do some film and TV stuff, workshops down the line maybe. But I thought, okay, so we'll do some voice work, we'll do some musical theatre work, we'll do some scene studies, and I thought that would be the best place to start, because I didn't want anything to come across as intimidating. I didn't want anybody to feel like they had to have experience coming into it.
Yeah, or that it wasn't for them.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that was, I obviously I wanted, to fill out the roster, have as many people out as possible, but I still wanted to keep the groups as small as I could, because the bigger the group, the more things get lost and people don't feel like they can speak up.
It can be more one-on-one, less in the crowd. Exactly,
and that's kind of what I aimed for. And and I get a buzz off working with people one-on-one, because you learn a lot about people through drama training, because everything comes back down to your body, your mind, and like how you approach things. And the first thing we always do in any sort of drama setting is start with your breath and relaxation.
Yeah.
And
bring it back to basics.
Exactly. And you can always kind of tell what people are like when you start to go into that. Some people get it right away. Some people are able to, they find their breath, they find their sort of point of relaxation straight away, and others really struggle with that. And I'll say I struggle with that.
Do you know, it's harder than you think. So I've recently taken up Pilates for my Sins, and like that, there's the exercises, then there's the breath work, and then there's like the trying to get the core right. And I found the first week I went, I didn't know about the breath work, right? So I thought, I can do these exercises. I've been going to the gym for years. This is fine. Then the second week, the instructor pulled me aside. She's like, okay, so I'm going to show you the breath now. And when I tried to incorporate the breath, I was like, do you know what? I think I was forgetting to breathe last week. And I was able able to do the exercise far better. So it is harder to find that breadth. But as you said, you've got the 2 workshops coming up now in August. So on the 9th, you've got acting through song. And then on the 23rd, you have your scene study. So as you said, looking at 2 different aspects there. But you have an exciting project starting in September, the Actors Clinic. Tell me about that one.
So really, the Actors Clinic is a kind of a monthly networking group is how I kind of like to look at it. I'm mainly going to be pushing it towards actors, but the idea is to get like-minded, people in the arts industry together into a room, have the chats, talk about scripts, talk about upcoming work that people have, and maybe if somebody had a piece of writing that they wanted a group of actors to maybe just read and perform for them to kind of see how it works or if it does work, and putting actors who don't know each other in a room together and see what happens from that. And
it nearly sounds like LinkedIn in person.
It is definitely, but it's allowing that sort of the creativity to happen in the room as well.
With the right people around you.
Exactly. And to encourage it as well. And like with myself and maybe a few others facilitating it, we'll be able to kind of push it in a different direction or whatever seems most useful to people at the time.
Yeah, you can steer it in the way that you can observe that person might need to go in.
Exactly. And with that, we're not looking for people with any huge amount of experience either. Like all experiences or all experience levels are welcome. The idea is just to kind of create that space where people can, just put it all out there and see what comes about from it. And I'm really excited about that in particular, because it's less of a teachy one for me.
Yeah.
I can kind of get in on the creative side of it too,
And as we all say, it's the likes of a thing that you'd see in maybe the cities. You don't tend to get it down in our areas. So it's great to see that so much is happening in Mullingar Arts Centre alone. But like that you're providing classes and courses for people that you're going, there's a need for this. From yourself from being an actor, this is an area you would benefit from. So you're putting those on. But outside of the clinic and the workshops you're doing, there's lots going on in the Arts Centre at the moment that I know you're heavily involved in as well. You've got the likes of, there's new dance classes for adults. You were telling me about that.
Yeah.
Then as well, you are involved in a number of the productions that are happening, some of the plays, musicals type thing. So there's loads going on. Yeah,
there's a lot. I spoke on your show maybe a few months ago. We auditioned for Rumours, which we have been really working hard on lately. That's been going really well. We've started rehearsals for the Mullingar Musical Society production of The Producers. Actually, one of my ex-students, Alana Luby, is directing a play on this weekend.
Wow.
It starts on Saturday. It's called The Wolves. And she is fresh out of drama school herself, and she put together an all-female cast. Wow. And it's
great to get a platform, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. She didn't really have to jump through many hoops for it. It was kind of like she approached Sean Lynch down the Arts Centre, and he was like more than happy. He's like, you put it together and we'll showcase it for you. That's
what you want. You want to see that your local areas are encouraging your local artists to stay in the area and to put on these great productions.
Exactly. And it's that kind of... See, and that's the tough thing about it. I mean, anything in the arts takes a lot of time and takes a lot of energy out of people. And if you're not getting that sort of support around it, it becomes a little bit... People tend to get a little bit cynical about it. People tend to, disassociate. And so that's why, even just keeping, like, as I always say, keep stretching the muscle. Keep it there. Keep just checking in with these things. Even if you're not performing every day of the week or doing shows every year, it's just something that you can kind of always call back to. Because most people, and I think most people I talk to, have some experience or some memory of theatre.
Yeah, and they want to get back to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of what we wanted to do, especially even with that Rumours play, is that I wanted to bring back people who haven't acted a long time or have never acted before.
Daniel, I'd love to have you on for the whole evening, but unfortunately we're out of time, so you can see more details on Mullingar Arts Centre. That's it for me tonight. Joe Cooney's with you after the news at 8, and I'll be back with you next Thursday evening in my usual slot of 7 to 8. Until next week, good night.